Let me introduce you guys to the Zorneo region, a brand new Pokemon Fakemon region set in Indonesia. Now this is created by EJ Monsters, who you can find on Instagram, and I've linked their Insta down in the description for you to go and check them out. But let's get straight into it and choose our starter Pokemon. Now the grass type starter is called Dureg and combines both a durian fruit and a hedgehog, which kind of makes sense because they're both very spiky, but I think this guy is very, very cute as well. I think also like the little bit of the durian fruit, like the little stem at the top, is a nice little addition, but this looks very cute. It evolves into Scavenge now. So now the spiky little ball shape is now obviously a lot bigger. The spikes are still along the arms and the back, but the legs are a little bit more exposed here. We can see that stem on the head now kind of almost looks a bit more like a hat, and that's going to make a lot more sense in the final evolution as well. And that's because the final evolution is called Venturage, which is now a grass and ground type Pokemon and combines the elements of the durian fruit, the hedgehog, but also an Indiana Jones as well. You can see that hat looking a lot like Indiana Jones's hat, but of course that whip that is iconic with Indiana Jones has a really cool look here on this Pokemon. It's like a little spiky plant mouth thing that he can whip out from his arm, which is such like an interesting little gimmick for this Pokemon. I really like it. Going into the fire starter, it is Cub Brave. So it is based on a sun bear, and it also combines the Dayak tribal warrior in there as well, which explains like the little bone look on the top of its head. But I think this looks really cute. I really like the design for this. It almost looks like it has like a superhero mask over its eyes as well. It evolves into Braversa. So now that massive like flame frill around the neck and the flames coming off the tips of the ears look really, really nice. And then lastly evolves into Earth Savior, which you will see is now a fire and rubber type Pokemon. Rubber is a brand new element that's been introduced into this Pokemon region, and we're going to see a lot of rubber type Pokemon coming up soon. Now this Pokemon obviously still looking like that sun bear, but the rubber elements, especially on the arms and the shoulder pads, gives it a massive like inflated shoulder pad look, but obviously has those flames coming out of it as well, which is really cool. So before I get into the water star, just a quick look at the rubber typing. So it is a brand new typing that is both offensive and defensive. I'll let you pause the video if you want to have a bit more look into that info there, but here's the offensive and defensive types with the effectiveness, just to have a bit of a coverage of all of that. And we've also got some of the other Pokemon that could be potentially a rubber typing as well. So things like Lickitung and Apom and Blissey would become a pure rubber type instead of the normal types, but then we've got some half rubber type ones here as well. But we'll get into the rubber typing a little bit more later on. We have our water starter next, which is called Elefrown. Now this is based on the Asian elephant, and it also combines elements of the blue-ringed octopus as well. You can see the blue rings along the back on the head, especially that big one on the front of its head as well. It does look very sad though, but it has got those massive ears, which are like touching the ground as well and have those purple elements on it, which is kind of cool. Evolves into Cranky Fat now, so now it's a completely different deposition. Definitely not looking very sad. Now it looks very aggressive and very angry. We can see that trunk has turned into like a massive hydro cannon, and even the ears sticking up like that definitely makes it look very, very aggressive. And this has actually become a water and poison type now, so those purple elements that we saw in the starter have now developed into a poison typing. And then the final evolution is Ella Plague, which I think is a really cool name, combining the plague in there, obviously because it's a poison type. Definitely combining more elements of the blue-ringed octopus in there. We can see like the tentacle kind of look coming off its head instead of those big elephant ears. But the trunk is massive as well. That cannon that we saw in the previous evolution has now changed a little bit, but it's still looking very, very formidable. And even like the tusks almost look like torpedo cannons as well. So looking at all our starters here, I think the fire starter is my favorite one, but in terms of final evolutions, that grass type starter based on Indiana Jones I think is so cool, so I think I'm gonna have to pick the grass type starter overall. Let me know down in the comments which starter you're going to pick. Now moving into Route 1, and our Route 1 bug is Slumbug, which is a pure bug type Pokemon, and it's based on the Pill Bug, which is looking really cute. It's all curled up. It almost looks like a little baby in a little cot. But as well as the Pill Bug, it's also like a circus theme, so the red and white stripes we're going to see throughout this Pokemon is that's because it's based on the circus. It evolves into Pupanu, so now it's like that cocoon Pokemon that is very traditional for the Route 1 bug. Definitely looking like a circus tent now, that red and white coloring, but also just like the design across the entire body. And this actually has a split evolution. If you evolve it at night, it becomes Jollypede, which is a bug and rubber type Pokemon, and this is based off the Circus Ringmaster. It's got like that big mustache and the hat and everything like that for the Circus Ringmaster, but it's also combined with a Millipede as well, hence all those legs and that really long elongated segmented body that it has as well. But if you evolve it during the day, it becomes Muscipede, speed, which is now based on that traditional circus strongman. This Pokemon is looking very big and very bulky. I think if I'm gonna have to choose between the two though, I think I prefer Jollipede. I think that's a really cool design. Now the Route 1 bird is called Chirp and is a normal and flying type Pokemon. This is based on the Barley Miner, and this Pokemon looks exactly like the Barley Miner, especially with the coloring and the blue around the eyes. So I think the artist has done a fantastic job in capturing that. It evolves into Minor Glide, so now it's actually an electric and flying type Pokemon. We can see the yellow on the tips of the wings and the tail, and even like that lightning bolt near the eye as well. But I absolutely love its final evolution in Storm Glide, looking like a really nice Route 1 bird final evolution. I love that a lot. But just those lightning bolts across the body, like the lightning bolt on the face, on the head, on the tail, all of those together look really, really nice. It's actually got some inspirations from David Bowie with that lightning bolt over the face, so that's really cool. And then the Route 1 rodent next is called Squirrogue, so it is a normal and dark type Pokemon. This is actually based on the vampire squirrel of Borneo, or the tufted ground squirrel. So I think we can really see that with how fluffy this Pokemon is, especially in the ears, on the tail, but the coloring looks really nice together. It evolves into Squirravage, so now it is getting much bigger and much fluffier. That tail is huge now. It's like bigger than the whole rest of the body, but I think overall it just looks like a really cool Pokemon. Next, going into the Pika clone for the region, which is Robusta, which is an electric and ground type Pokemon. Now this is based on the Luwak, which is a little rodent that you can find in Indonesia that actually eats coffee beans and then poops them out, and that coffee bean is a delicacy in the region. So Robusta also has that kind of coffee bean design as well. You can definitely see that like in the pattern on the stomach. The design of the tail coming out like that almost looks like it's made of coffee beans. But I think this Pokemon overall looks very, very cute, and the shiny looks really cool as well. I think it looks a lot like Emolga in the coloring. If you want to see any of this extra information like the shinies or dex information, all of it can be on EJ Monster's Instagram, so go check that out for more info. But we can also see that this is the partner Pokemon of the Professor. So the Professor of the region is called Professor Rafflesion, and I love that it says this is a human and male type, but you will immediately notice that this looks a lot like Dwight Schrute from The Office. I love it's got the world's greatest professor mug, the look, the design, the little bow tie, all of it perfect, and apparently his personality is a lot like Dwight's as well. He's very passionate about Pokemon, although apparently he lacks the emotion to be able to show this. Now his name comes from the Rafflesia arnoldii, which is also known as the corpse lily, which is actually the giant flower that is on Venusaur's back. So it continues the theme of professors being named after plants and trees. Now, Robusta evolves into Barista, which sounds a lot like a barista, the person that makes the coffee. That pattern on the front looks a lot like an apron, and we can see little coffee beans coming out of that apron as well. Looks very, very cute. And it's interesting the ears have been moved forward to almost make it look like it's got hair or like a toupee going on with that mustache as well. Now, you all know that I obviously adore Fakemon, and I'm a big fan of Pokerogue. So if we combine those two loves into an amazing new game, as well as add in a really cool art style and soundtrack that gives Saturday morning cartoon vibes, then we get Dimensionals. Dimensionals is a roguelike turn-based RPG that is incredibly fast-paced and really tested my strategic skills. Construct your team with dozens of unique heroes, add power-ups, combos, relics, and then take on some world-crushing bosses. When I first tried Dimensionals, I found it really easy to get into, and I had one of those moments where I was like, okay, just one more battle. And then that was one more battle. And then before I knew it, I'd been playing for hours. Dimensionals comes out later in 2024, but you can play the demo for free right now by clicking the link in the description, and you can also add the full game to your Steam wishlist. So click the link in the description, and then let's get back to the Zorneo region. Next, we're going into another rubber type Pokemon. This is a rubber and poison type. This is Gumvenus, and this is of course based on a snake, but it's also based on bubblegum as well. That pink coloring throughout the entire body of the snake, but also that little sticky bit down the bottom near the tail, obviously a lot like bubblegum, which I think looks really cool. This is a very cute looking snake, and it evolves into Gumpython, and we can see those massive bubblegum bubbles all around the head and the front of the snake there, but also around the neck and the tail as well. Overall, looking like a pretty cool snake. I do love the bright green eye. It definitely contrasts really well with the rest of the coloring of the snake too. Going into our first Zornean Pokemon now, and it's actually Zornean Drowsy. Now this is based on the tapir, which Drowsy obviously is, and the tapir is often brown, but the Malayan tapir is actually black and white. So that's why we've got a black and white Drowsy here, which I think looks perfect. Also looks very nice. It's got like a little bow tie going on. But this has now become a pure dark type Pokemon. Of course, evolving into our Zornean Hypno, which has a really interesting fluffy area around the neck there, but of course still keeping that black and white coloring, which looks really cool. This has now become a dark and fighting type now, but actually has a brand new third evolution now. This is Magnipno, which is looking very, very cool. This is actually now based on a mafia boss, specifically Don Corleone, and I think this captures it perfectly. The massive fluffy elements all over the shoulders and the back is like that coat jacket over the shoulders, but just like the expression that it's got and even what it's doing with his hands there definitely looks like Don Corleone very, very well. Next is Chris Horn, which is a steel and bug type Pokemon. So this is based on the Javan Rhino Beetle, but also combines the Chris dagger as well, which is that kind of wavy looking dagger that is very important in Indonesian folklore. This looks like a very dangerous Pokemon despite being very, very small. But then evolves into Chris Assassin, so having like assassin in the name. This is getting much bigger now. It's got the Chris blade on its head, but it's also got 2 of them on its arms as well. So showing it here to show the size comparison, it's obviously much bigger as it's evolved. It's still much smaller than a human, but I think would be a very dangerous Pokemon because of all those blades all over its body. I absolutely love the shiny for this as well. Next is Faux Angler. Now the Pokemon here is actually that little bit on the top of its head. It's based on a sea rabbit, which is very, very toxic. It's almost like a parasite here connecting to that bigger fish Pokemon to help to defend it, because obviously the little Pokemon on the end is very, very small. This is a psychic and poison type Pokemon now, and it looks like that big Pokemon has been hypnotized. Then next is Mellow Shello, which I think looks very, very cute. Obviously based on a watermelon, you can see by the shape and the coloring of it there, but it's also based on the painted terrapin, which almost looks like the shell of the painted terrapin. Looks like a watermelon anyway, so it looks really cool here. It is a water and grass type Pokemon, and that evolves into Shallow Malord, which is now looking like a giant tortoise kind of Pokemon, I suppose. It's got that spiky shell on its back, but of course all the watermelon shell elements all on its knees, its shoulders, its chin, its body, really to protect the front and the back of this Pokemon. This is going into a theme now where we're combining like a reptile with a fruit. So then next we have Draco Rambola, which is an electric and grass type Pokemon. And this is combining the Draco Valance, which is like that flying, gliding dragon, with a star fruit. So the star fruit coloring you can definitely see here with all the yellows, but the spiky star elements on the bottom of the chin and the top of the head down the back as well. It evolves into Starvern, so definitely looking a lot more, almost like a dinosaur, I'd say now, with those really long claws and just the body and face and everything. Definitely looks like a dinosaur. And the last of this theme is Shrikaf, which is a ground and grass type Pokemon. This is based on the Javan Rhino and is also based on the Shrikea, otherwise known as the sugar apple. So we can see that sort of bumpy green kind of look all over the back of this Pokemon. It's got like a massive hump, but overall it does look very, very cute. And that evolves into Kea Rhino. Definitely not looking so cute anymore. The Rhino elements, especially with that horn, have really come through as it's evolved. Still got those kind of bumpy looks on the back because of the Shrikea fruit. And our next Zornean type is Zornean Tauros, which I absolutely love the design of this. A ghost and rock type Pokemon, obviously based with our Tauros, but this looks really, really cool. I love the tail, how you can't even like really see the tail. It's now split off into all these rocks that are almost like floating in the air and all these spectral elements coming out. The ghostly kind of wisp all over its feet and its neck and the tips of its horns, and all of it together just looks really, really cool. I absolutely love this Pokemon. Then next we have Festive Pass, which is actually a new evolution for Nosepass, like a split evolution instead of Probopass, and this is a rock and fairy type now. This is based on the Ondel, as you can see here, which is very bright and very colorful, and this is kind of like a performance doll or an ornament which symbolizes entertainment within Indonesia. Then next we have Crandy, which I think looks absolutely adorable. This is a fairy and water type Pokemon. This is based on the Candy Crab, which is very, very pink, but usually very spiky, but this is more so following the design of a wrapped candy. We can see those pincers are very round, like the ending of the wrapper of a candy piece. It evolves into Clawton, which is now based on cotton candy, and that cotton candy is completely covering the entire Pokemon. You can barely see the face amongst all that cotton candy, which looks very, very cute as well. And then all of those elements combine together to make Crustache, which I think looks really, really interesting. Normally with some kind of crab final evolution Pokemon, the focus is on the pincers being very dangerous, but it doesn't look so dangerous in here. They're just very round and large. I love that the little crabs are all around the body and the pincers as well. Then next, another rubber Pokemon. We've got the rubber and water type Pokemon Unducky, which is of course based on a rubber ducky. We've got both a female and a male version here. The female looking a lot nicer and friendlier than the male version, which is looking very aggressive. We can also see they've got their sort of life preserver kind of look for the bodies of these Pokemon as well. Now, because there's a male and female version, there is a split evolution as well, depending on which Unducky you have. So if you have a male, it's going to evolve into Life Gander, which is based on a lifeguard. We can definitely see that aggressive look still coming out here. I love the expression of this Pokemon, but definitely looking a lot like a lifeguard. It's got those big arms. It looks very athletic. It looks very muscly and strong. It's even got those life preserver rings around the arms as well, but almost looks like it's wearing a hat too. Then the female version is definitely a different kind of vibe. This is Duckcoat, which is now rubber and flying type actually, and it's also based on a raincoat. So you can see like a bit of a hood, and the wings coming out of like the raincoat covering the thin body that we have for Duckcoat here. And then we have a new Grubbin in Zorneo Grubbin, which is now a rubber and bug type Pokemon. Definitely looking very rubbery. Even the pincers are very rubbery now and don't seem to be very dangerous. But this is now based on a bumper car, and I can imagine this thing bumping all over the place and being very bouncy as well. Its new evolution in Bug definitely looks like a bumper car. That inflatable ring sort of around the body, but even like the antenna on the back of it. And then lastly, it evolves into Bumper Volt, which is now a rubber and electric type Pokemon. This is more so based on a drone now, because it looks like it is flying. It definitely looks a bit more like robotic in a way. That gets us up to number 50 in the dex, guys, but there are over 150 Pokemon that's within the Zorneo dex, so I'm going to save that for another video. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you can catch that video when it comes out, or if you guys are watching this in the future, it'll probably already be up and it'll be found right here. So go check out the rest of the Zorneo region.